Hello students, welcome to the next video on separation of mixtures. Today we will be discussing the different ways of separating the components of mixtures. In my previous videos you might have understood how mixtures are formed, what are the various kinds of mixtures. This is a part of the third chapter, elements, compounds and mixtures. So let us begin. So if you can see the reason why do we need to separate the components of mixture. Firstly, we do it to remove the harmful or the undesirable substances from it. For example, like you know that we suppose there are a lot of mangoes. You might be going to buy mangoes. You like to pick up the best mangoes for yourself, right? And you see that the others which are rotten or bad, you remove them. So we do it to remove the harmful or the undesirable substances. Similarly, you might have seen your parents pick stones from the rice and pulses. That is also a way by which we separate the components of mixture. So that is to remove the harmful or undesirable substances. The next point is to obtain the useful substances. Now, what are useful substances? You might have heard or seen also the evaporation of seawater is done to get the salt. So we are getting the useful substances. You know that we have iron ores here in Odisha, a lot of iron ore. You know that it is not directly the iron that we get it in the form of the ore. So a lot of impurities are there. So to get the iron from it, it has to be undergone a few separation techniques so that we can get the useful substance. Similarly, it is done to prepare the pure substances. Now, how can we do that? You have seen that we need distilled water in the experiments which are done, or even in the hospitals to prepare medicines. We need the pure substances. We can't use the normal tap water. In the laboratory, we need the pure water to do the experiment. So, like that, pure silicon is also used to manufacture the chips in the electronic machines and items like a computer, etc. So, these are the reasons why we need to do the process of separation. Now, if you see the methods of separation, you can see that I have made a chart dividing the different mixtures that we are going to separate. Like, is it a solid mixture? Is it a solid liquid mixture? Is it a liquid mixture? And so on. So now if I separate a solid mixture, the following techniques I shall be using, like hand picking, sieving, magnetic separation, sublimation, threshing and winnowing, gravitational method, and the solvent extraction. If we are going for solid liquid mixture, we will be reading about sedimentation and decantation, filtration, evaporation, crystallization, and centrifugation. And if we will talk about liquid mixtures, we will be reading about separating funnel, using the technique of separating funnel, the distillation method, fractional distillation, and chromatography. So when we are going to separate different kinds of mixture, which method will be applied will depend upon what state that mixtures are in. Are they a solid mixture, or a solid liquid, or a liquid mixture? So let us start with the solid mixtures. Now the first method is a very easy method which almost all of you do at home. You have seen your mothers do. That is hand picking. In this method, the undesirable constituents are removed from the mixture by picking it with the hands, and that is why the name is hand picking. Like in the beginning, I gave you example of your mother removing the stones from the rice, or some undesirable substances are there. So we remove it with the help of our hands. Similarly, you can also say that when we remove, there are many apples in a basket and we want to remove the best ones for us, so we can remove it with the help of the hand picking method. The second method that we will be discussing is sieving. This method of separation is used for separating the undesirable constituents from a mixture by applying or using a sieve, and that is why the method is called sieving. So you might have seen that when we have to remove we have very fine sieves at our home through which we can separate the bran, that is a brownish cover that is there on the grain after, like, we grind the wheat flour. When we get the wheat flour from the wheat, that brown substances can be removed by using the fine sieve. Also, there are some like diamond merchants and all, they use a larger sized sieve for separating the pearls and the diamonds. So sieving is using a special device called the sieve. Then we have the magnetic separation method, in which, as you can know, the separation is happening with the help of magnet. The method of separating the magnetic constituents from a mixture is called the magnetic separation. So we are using a magnet to separate the substances which are magnetic in nature. And in factories, you might have seen the scrap iron that is there, it is removed from the waste material by the electromagnetic cranes. So they are having the magnetic power and they are able to attract the iron, which is a magnetic substance, with the help of magnetic separation. Do remember, we are talking about the solid-solid mixture. Our next method is sublimation. Now this is a method, or sublimation is a method by which the solid directly changes into the vapor state without passing to the liquid state. And there are many substances which are sublimable, like ammonium chloride, iodine, naphthalene ball. So these kind of substances which are able to sublime, they are used with and there is another component which does not sublime. So we can easily separate the sublimable substances from the mixture then. Like for example, you have common salt and ammonium chloride. So common salt or the sodium chloride does not sublime. So you can separate ammonium chloride from the mixture of ammonium chloride and sodium chloride by the method of sublimation. Then the next technique is threshing and winnowing. Now this is again used by the farmers. You might have seen in the TVs or in pictures that how the wheat or the paddy stalks are beaten against the surface. So when they beat it, the grain sticking to the stalks, they separate and fall. So that is the threshing. And in winnowing, the grain husk mixture is allowed to fall slowly from a height by using the wind. So when there is wind, the lighter particle will fly away and the heavy particle falls in one place, and the lighter particles, they separate out. The husk is generally lighter than the grain. So that is a method of separating the husk, the grain from the husk. Our next method is gravitational method. In this method, you can say that one component is lighter than water and the other is heavier than water. Now we are talking about solid-solid mixture. Here I'll give you example of sand and sawdust. So when I have sand and sawdust, both are the solid matter, but the sand is heavier when dissolved in water and sawdust is light. So this sawdust is going to float on the surface of water. So that method is called the gravitational method. We can remove them separately because the sawdust can be easily collected from the top and the sand settles at the bottom. So then we can dry them and make it useful to us. So gravitation method uses gravity. So it's the heavy particles settle down because of gravity. Then comes the solvent extraction. Now in this method also one of the component is soluble in a liquid. Now we are again, I'm telling, we are talking about solid. So here we can say sand and salt. These both are the solid substances. So when we talk about the sand and salt, you know that salt dissolves in water, but sand will not dissolve in water. So by that method, once the salt is dissolved in water, the water becomes salty and the sand can be removed easily. Now the salty water can be put to evaporation and the salt can be removed. The water will evaporate and we can get back the salt. So that method is known as solvent extraction. So these were the method for the solid-solid separation. Now we will move to the solid-liquid mixtures. Now when we discuss about the solid liquid mixtures, the first few cases which I am discussing are the cases in which the solid is insoluble in the liquid. Like if the soluble does not dissolve in the liquid and we want to separate it, these are the methods that we can apply. First one is sedimentation and decantation. Now you have read about this in your earlier classes. Even in class 4 or 5 you might have read about sedimentation and decantation. What happens is, if you have seen muddy water, suppose this is a muddy water, you can see the water particles with blue and the brown particles suppose show the mud or the dirt in it. So this is the muddy water which we allow to settle for some time. You will see that the mud or the impurity, the heavier impurity like sand or mud, they settle down in the bottom of the beaker. So that is called the sediment, and the clear liquid which is left above is called the supernatant liquid. So this process, the settling down of the insoluble heavy solid particles in a solid liquid mixture at the bottom of the container, is called sedimentation. So most of the time during rainy season, sometimes we do get a supply of little muddy water, but when we allow it to settle in our tanks, what we see is the impurity settle down and the water is clear above. So then all these methods are known as sedimentation. And the same thing after sedimentation, the process of pouring the clear supernatant liquid without disturbing the sediment is called decantation. Now if I pour the liquid into another beaker without disturbing the sediment, then that process will be called decantation. Now where are these methods applied? For removing sand in water or clearing the mud from the water, we can go for sedimentation and decantation. Next method is filtration. In this method, again, the process of separating the fine insoluble solid particles from a solid liquid mixture through a filter. You might be using a filter paper or a muslin cloth or something like that, which separates the impurities from the solid from the liquid in the mixture. So suppose we are holding a beaker with the muddy water and allowing the mixture to pour through the filter paper. Here we have put a filter paper in the funnel. You will see some residue, the solid residue is left here, and the clear water, which is called the filtrate, now is collected in the beaker. So this process is known as filtration. So the solid component which is left in the filter paper, that is called the residue, and the liquid which flows down the funnel to the beaker below is called the filtrate. And then the solid can be scraped off from the paper. If it is useful, you can use it. Otherwise, if it is just the impurity, you can always throw it away. So this is the process of filtration. Now also you can remove chalk powder from water by this method, clay in water, sawdust in water. Even in your homes, if you might be seeing, we remove tea and tea leaves by the process of filtration. You can say we have the sieve, so that is acting as a filter and allowing the tea to be strained and the tea leaves do not come down. Our next method is centrifugation. Now centrifugation is a method of separating the fine suspended solid particles from a solid liquid mixture by rotating the mixture in a centrifuge. Now that's a particular kind of machine, the centrifuge, which is used to rotate the liquid solid mixture at a very high rate. Also sometimes you might have seen, like when the cream is churned vigorously in the mixers, you will see that the fat floats on the top and as butter, and you can easily remove it. So when we are rotating this solid liquid mixture at a high speed, then we call that as centrifugation. Also you can say that in washing machines, centrifugation is used to squeeze out the water from the wet clothes. You have seen that we have a dryer in which we put the clothes which are wet, and we rotate it. As we spin, the water is removed and our clothes dry. So that is also moving at high speed. So it's working like something like the centrifuge only. And then we talk about evaporation. which is again a very easy method which you have read previously. It is the process of changing a liquid into its vapor state. So like suppose we need to remove the, that we remove the common salt from the seawater by the process of the evaporation. So the liquid, that is water, it gets evaporated, and here we don't collect it back. If we will collect the liquid back, then that process will become distillation. So here we are collecting the solid which is remaining after the liquid has evaporated from it. So we are discussing about solid liquid mixture. And then our last method is crystallization. Then it is the process of separating a pure solid in the form of its crystals from its solution. And in this method also, like the common salt from seawater, this can also be removed by the process of crystallization. Even the impure samples of copper sulfate and alum, they can be purified by the crystallization method. Here it forms the crystals after like it's very similar to evaporation, but here the solid forms the crystal. Crystals are the solids which are almost like having regular shape, flat surfaces and straight edges, so they are called crystals. And similarly the crystals will be remaining and the water will evaporate. So I am very sure by today's discussion on solid mixture separation and solid liquid mixture separation, you are able to understand about the different methods that we discussed. Just let me know which all techniques you use at home for your day-to-day activity, or you might have seen happening around you. Please answer me in the comment section, and do not forget to like, share and subscribe to my channel. Do press the bell icon for notification. Thank you.